typical live episode. This is just me doing a video that I would typically do a recording of live. I saw this. I wanted to leave it. Oh, petty dramas, man, minutia. But god damn it, sometimes it's minutia that you want to get involved in. So this guy, this starry-eyed guy up here, the guy who's startled. This is the look. That man, that guy. That's the look of a man named Dana Miliband the night Hillary Clinton lost the election to reality show host. Guess who he was voting for? So this guy also works for the Washington Post. You don't say. He carries water for the Washington Post. That's awesome. In carrying water for the Washington Post, Miliband has taken to writing hate scribes, angry, flailing himself about at progressives, at leftists, at people who were further left to what the Democratic Party considers themselves to be. I guess that's the way you can say it. Democracy dies in darkness. I love that line. Democracy dies in the darkness. It sounds so badass and so Batman-esque. The reality of it is, democracy actually dies in the full light of everyone watching it. In many respects, on the pages of the Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, and many of these other media networks. And look, it's not so much that part of it has to do with the way media carries water for government. You have manufactured consent in many respects. The media tells a particular narrative. That narrative is not necessarily narratives of things that you yourself need in your particular life. It's not even giving you reality, per se. You look out at the world. Think about the billion of things that would happen during the course of a day. Think about it. A billion things. And the billion things that comes out, this is the media landscape that you end up getting. So think of what CNN runs on a daily basis and understand that that's out of the million things that take place in the course of a day. What's your House representative name in your particular district? Do you know who that guy is? Do you know how that guy is voting? Is that important information? Meaning, yes, I know Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. I know the big guys. But what about everybody else? There are what, 435 members? What about the member of Senate? I'm making this point that there are things that go on a daily basis that the media, for the most part, does not remind you of, does not tell you about. Democracy doesn't die in the darkness. You can say in the darkness in the sense that the media doesn't cover those things that murder democracy. It's not what they're trying to imply it is. It's something different, but the euphemism still fits. If you're not having the conversation about a broken political apparatus, none of the bullshit about us and them, a broken political apparatus, you have concentrated wealth in the hands of a very few people who digs his hands, digs his fingers, his prongs into the political apparatus. And digging his hands into the political apparatus, you have people that lean a particular way that's not in the direction of the normal everyday American. They lean in the interest of the concentrated wealth. Who do you think pays them? What do you think? Meaning, how do you get $1 billion to run a campaign? And do you think they're giving $1 billion out of the kindness of their hearts? These plutocrats. They've made their money by having sort of bleeding hearts. What's more likely? You're paying somebody. It's a bribe. It's an open bribe. Here's money. We're going to get a bunch of lobbyists together and we're going to give this person trips. We're going to give this person cash. We're going to make this person a super PAC. And if that person doesn't vote our way, we're going to have a super PAC against that person. It's bribery. It's bribery. You have a capitalistic system and you've allowed the governmental apparatus of that particular system to be taken down. Your problem at a central level is this kind of capitalistic impulse of maximizing one's profit. Yes, you have a government, but you forget that the people who are in those governmental positions are individuals, and those people also deal with issues of scarcity, meaning they're also under this idea of status, this idea of getting more, this capitalistic impulse saying that the name of the game space is to accrue more and more wealth, more and more power. So yes, I'm going to do things that allow me to accrue that. It's a capitalistic system. It just so happens that the people with the cash has that ability to give that. What do you do to get ahead in that system? The mainstream media looks at this as if there's nothing to see here. Russia and Trump is the problem. It's Russia and Trump. It's Russia and Trump. Democrats said this. Republicans said that. You be the judge. I know, but there are a billion things that went on in the course of my day. Why are you choosing these particular items to show me? And are these particular items the things that I myself need to focus on to get down to the areas of government, or to get down to the areas of running a society, a sane society? How many people did Trump murder with those drones? How many people did Obama murder with those drones? Why is Bush at home after murdering 1 million Iraqis and invading a country that didn't do anything? Why are these things big things of discussion in the media? What is Dana Miliband doing? Does Dana Miliband toe this line that democracy dies in the darkness, having hate scribes to Bernie Sanders? It's not the real shit that goes on in this particular society that's the problem. No. Dana Miliband has determined what it was. It's those goddamn burners. I want to show you an article that he wrote. And look, perspectives are relative. So you can have a particular relative perspective. But how your perspective lines up with goddamn reality makes a difference on whether or not it's true. There's a certain thing between perspective and there's another thing for truth. Meaning this particular reality, yes, this reality to many degrees is relative. But if what you're saying is not lining up with the actual reality to which we're accustomed to, then you're full of it. The Bernie bros and sisters are coming to the Republicans' rescue. You don't say. You've lost every level of government. I mean, I get it. You're a Democratic functionary working at a news agency. You've lost everything. Do you get that? You're having this conversation about people coming to the rescue of Republicans. You've lost everything. What am I missing? I mean, what am I fundamentally missing? You're writing an article, taking shots at Bernie Sanders and his supporters, saying, hey, man, the Republicans, they could flame out, and we can get this thing if those progressives just not have values, not have real things that they themselves believe that they want for their particular country and their world. If they just suck it up and vote for a Democrat. Let me tell you what's not going to get progressives to vote for Democrats. Writing ridiculousness in the Washington Post. Things could go well for Democrats in next year's midterm elections if they don't burn out. Oh, that's clever. That's clever. You're a snarky guy, Dana. Let's see. Let's keep going. There are parts of this that are awesome. And the first part, I love this. Things go well for Democrats for next midterm elections. Let's talk about now. Let's talk about now. I find this to be a fascinating moment from now. Let's be present in the moment. Why have you lost so much? Let's have that conversation. Tell me, Dana. Devote time and pages to why your team loses so much. How does Hillary Clinton lose to reality show hosts? How did she lose to reality show hosts? I mean, what I'm asking you is not questions based upon kind of a year going to the next election where you think there's this kind of cyclical thing going on. No, I'm getting at the fundamental heart of your issue, the fundamental part of the problem. 50% of the population just doesn't vote. Dana Miliband writes them off. We're only dealing with the political calculus that we have at our disposal. Screw those 50% of the people that don't vote. Fuck those people. I'm trying to get progressives on board. But no, let's have a conversation about those people and why those people don't vote. You believe 50% of the country just don't care. It's not that they don't care, dude. It's that they full well believe that the party who's supposed to represent their interests doesn't. And year after year, you get a shrinking pool. Yes, you're going to get a demographic shift in that sense. But ultimately, the number of people who come out for these presidential elections and these elections goes down. As people become more aware, I guess you can come up more woke, saying, oh yeah, this doesn't work. This political apparatus does not give me the items that I need. And just to make a clear point, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, the most hated candidates in the history of candidates, ending up being the two people who you have at your disposal to select. It's a gun against your head. Ultimately, Hillary Clinton put a gun in America's head and said, hey, I know you dislike me, but look at this guy. He's a reality show host. The American public said, we'll take the reality show host. That destroyed Dana Miliband. And now he's writing hate scribes to Bernie Sanders. Things could go well for Democrats in next year's midterm elections if they don't burn out. President Trump is woefully unpopular, feuding with Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and other Republicans. The GOP can't manage to repeal Obama to do much Obamacare. Now here's the catch. Do you remember progressives, some of us, making this argument that, look, Trump is a clusterfuck. If Trump gets in that office, they hate his guts. He's not going to be able to get anything done. Well, that's turning out to be true. Nod to Jimmy Dore on that one. But yes, that's turning out to be true. And this is essentially what Miliband is now admitting. You're right. He can't get anything done. Yes, we're trying to get him impeached so we can get Pence in, who can get a lot of shit done. But we're trying to get him impeached on something that never took place. Hey, Miliband, why don't you have a conversation about the VIP thing, the intelligence professionals shooting down that Russia narrative? Let's have that conversation. You're writing this stupid shit about Bernie Sanders. You don't care that essentially the Russian government narrative that's been portrayed in the media on your pages of the Washington Post, the New York Times, and all this other media, you don't care that the pages and voluminous talking about it may be wrong? Ooh, dude. You need to write an article about that. I'm just saying. Your Russian narrative, the reason, your pretense for actually impeaching Trump or trying to get Trump impeached is vanished. You're writing, talking about Bernie Sanders is somehow hobbling Democrats. Democrats are hobbling Democrats. It's nobody's responsibility but their own to get their votes. That's the first part. The second part is you have a massive conspiracy going on where somebody is literally creating information, creating evidence to make it look like a foreign government hacked this country. You have intelligence professionals saying this narrative is bankrupt. You have one journal after the next running the story showing that this Russian narrative is bankrupt. Is Dana Miliband, the esteemed writer of the Washington Post, where democracy dies in darkness, is he going to write an article repudiating all of the lies and everything else that took place, or repudiating the evidence for the VIPs, the intelligence professionals? That's what I want to see. That's what I would see. I would pay Miliband to see that. I would send him $1 in Patreon to see that. Look, what this boils down to, it's him blaming Bernie Sanders and progressives and leftists for not getting behind Democratic candidates. Essentially, dude, you guys need to settle. And if you guys just settle, we can take back the House. That's the entirety of the article. He could have written that in 3 or 4 lines. But of course, he didn't write that in 3 or 4 lines. He wrote a lot. The one part I do want to kind of point at is this thing of litmus tests. This idea that, you know, you have a litmus test for a candidate, meaning, are there certain things that I myself say I'm not voting for? Meaning, yeah, there's certain red lines. I would imagine anybody with some level of decency has red lines. So it's not crazy to say healthcare is a red line. Miliband doesn't like that. He doesn't like that. I don't think it's crazy for people to say, hey, pro-choice, that's a red line for me. Miliband probably doesn't like that either. And in his mind, you having red lines, you having things that you believe in, the values that you yourself hold true, you having those things is hobbling the country. Because Democrats can't get elected unless you just give away your value system. What Miliband fails to miss is that the problem with Democrats are Democrats. Nobody owes Democrats their votes. If Democrats can't convince somebody to vote for them over the batshit crazy Republican running against them, that's on Democrats. Part of this problem deals with the public thinking Democrats are liars. And Democrats have used identity politics to such a degree that in many respects they've alienated their base. Now you have a schism in your society that's been emboldened by essentially a country that's has a vicious racist history. Let's be honest. Dealing with identity in that sense, meaning both parties do it. They do it in different ways, but both parties do it. Emboldens that. That's what I'm saying. There's no reason that a Democrat should be losing to a Republican. These people are nuts. And you have to ask the question, why? Part of the reason why has to do with what the Democratic Party is supposed to be, what they used to be, and what they now are. In the same way that automation is not the problem with our society, automation is the solution to our society. The problem is our model. Same thing with the party. Bernie Sanders, the leftists, are not the problems of the Democratic Party. They're the solutions. Danny Miliband doesn't know what he's talking about. In one very specific case, where he's talking about healthcare, the polls that he's showing, he's trying to make this point that, look, man, a lot of people say that you have a lot of people who don't necessarily want single pill healthcare. That's true if you ask them for something very specific. If you ask them, do you believe that the government should take care of healthcare? That's over 50%. That's over 50%. I want to put his article down so you can read it. Ultimately, this boils down to Republicans are horrible. Republicans are bad people. Democrats can take back the House if progressives just fall in line. Cory Booker, he's a perfectly nice guy. You just have to meet him. You have to just get to know him. Kamala Harris is a perfectly nice woman. You just need to get to know her. That's essentially the argument Miliband is making. Yeah, dude, I have no affiliation with the party. It's at this point, it's not in me. It's not. I don't even think you realize it. It's this thing that people get sometimes where they're I think where people feel naturally inclined towards a particular party, like they would feel naturally inclined to the Democratic Party and naturally inclined to the Republican Party. I have no inclination to either. So you can't necessarily include me in your group. I'd wager that a lot of me's out there no longer have any necessary association with either. They feel completely disconnected from both. That has more to do with what you are, not necessarily who they are. I'd wager that they haven't moved. I'd wager the party moved. There's a difference in those things. Nobody should be a hillbot, meaning nobody should just vote for somebody just because they have a D beside their name. That is manic. That's insane. You get their vote when you represent their interests. If they don't believe that you're earnestly representing their interests, then you should not get their vote. It's that simple. It's not magic. It's politics. It's a transaction. All right, I'll leave it at that. I hope this went through okay. I didn't check it. And sometimes when I do live, it's live. You're always aware of fuck ups and run ons. That's all. All right, I'll leave it at that. All right, guys, have a good night. Oh, by the way, Sam Ronan is going to be on the show next Wednesday. I want to do a separate video for it. It just popped in my head. All right, guys, have a good night, everyone. If you enjoy the content, of course, you can always support the work through PayPal or Patreon. Thank you.